Hi, what's your name?
Mike Maccardini.
And Mr. Marcardini, what do you do?
I am the lead pastor at an Assemblies of God church in Santa Barbara, California.
Wonderful, wonderful. Going to talk with you today about motivation, leadership, and fellowship. Ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Wonderful. The first question to ask you would be about motivation. How do you motivate in the workplace at the church?
Well, church is the key word. I think if you were in a secular workplace, obviously it's money, it's advancement, it's kind of desiring to get to the top. But in the church, that's the key word, is that we do everything for the glory of God. We work unto the Lord, not as unto men. So He's always our motivation and desire for excellence in all that we do. And a call to ministry, that's probably the key thing that we see, that Christ motivates us and calls us to that position. And he's our model. He's our motivator. He's our example. It's never money. Money is always a wrong motivation to enter into ministry, because that's not where finances generally happen. But it's really just, I think, a call. God calls us, and He puts us that burden and that calling and that passion, and that's what drives us, the glory of God, and He's our example in that.
Wonderful. Great answer, Mr. Marcardini. That leads me to another question about motivation. From your experience, do you think most people motivate the same way you do inside of the church?
As pastors, or me personally as a person?
You as a pastor, actually.
Well, I think the pastor's the shepherd, the leader. He sets the tone and the example. So if he's not praying, if he's not leading, if he's not serving, I don't think anybody else is going to. Certain pastors have different, I think, areas and functions that they're gifted in. Mine is with people. I think it helps to be a people person. So being motivated to lead people, work with people, love them, see them transform and change. I think, like Jesus, at the heart of it, He was with people. He led people. He walked with them. He lived with them. So that's motivation in that. But I think different pastors are different. Some delegate away and they just focus on teaching and ministering. But by and large, me, that's my desire. I love working with people and seeing God's kingdom advance and grow in that because of working with people.
Wonderful. And kind of ask you a hard question here. Do you think you've done a good job at motivating your staff?
Yes and no. Within my own failings and shortcomings, I am driven to do a lot of it, and a lot of pride in that, saying, "Oh, if someone can't do it, I'm going to do it myself." And that leaves a lot of people behind, rather than risking failing so that we're equipping the saints. This is a reflection of me. I'm going to do it. If I want it done right, I'm going to do it myself. And so I struggle with that. But also, I know a lot of people look at me and say, look at the pastor. He could be mopping the floor. He's right out there doing it. And so I do think that an average parishioner or someone in our church will sit back and look at me and say, he's working hard. He loves the church. He loves us. And so I think that's a motivation. But I also know that there's that chance of really training people, equipping people, stepping back, not micromanaging, releasing people, sending them out like Jesus did, preparing them to do that. And that's where I'm growing and learning.
Wonderful. Great answer. And that goes right next to leadership. And there was a question I was going to ask, was discuss with you the patterns of learning in the workplace. But we're going to skip that one because you kind of answered that question just now. Going forward, Mr. Marcardini, can you tell me what leadership is, what mentorship is, and what role models are? Leadership first.
Leadership, obviously, whether it's the pastor, whether it's staff, whether it's ministry team, I think it's being the position where you are setting the pace, the tone, being before others, showing the way, walking before them, leading. So I think you're setting the example. And that's a big part of leadership, is that people are watching, they're following. Where are you leading them to? So I think, one, it's a gift that God gives us as leadership, but it's also a position, a staff position, a ministry team that we have here, deacons, certainly the pastoral staff. They're viewed as leaders. So I think you've got that natural position that people are going to follow, but people are also going to follow natural God-given leaders by how they live their life and the example and the models they set. So to me, leaders is a calling, but it's also a position, and it's really setting an example for people to follow.
Wonderful. How about mentorship?
Mentorship, and I don't think it necessarily has to be a leader. I think a mentor can be an older, wiser woman of God, man of God that comes alongside a new believer, a student, youth, and you're really just discipling. That's the command for all of us: go and make disciples. And so that discipleship is kind of a biblical word, whereas mentoring is kind of a secular leadership company word, where we really invest, we pour into them, we disciple them, we train them, we teach them, we come alongside of them. And that's really our desire, is that we're seeing new believers or young people being mentored. And that could be in the workplace, that could be career, relationships. So it's even an all-encompassing, I think, discipleship, more than discipleship, it's life.
Wonderful, wonderful. What about a role model? How would you describe a role model?
Someone that a mentoree or a mentored person would look up to. They look at people that are living a life a certain way, and they're the role model by the way they have, relationships, the way they work, the way they talk, the way they act. And that also, I think, is really what all Christians are supposed to be, as an example, a witness, a role model. Role model's another word like mentoring that we use in the business world. But I think that's what all mature believers are to be, is to be role models to those that are younger, to those in the faith that people would look up to and aspire to. Wonderful.
And just a couple more questions for you, Mr. Marcardini. What have you learned from a good leader?
I've had some good examples, and I've had some bad examples. Some bad examples, I really struggled with someone constantly hovering and micromanaging, questioning everything that I've done. So it kind of destroyed the atmosphere of creativity, trust. I was constantly questioning what I did, standing over me. And so that was a difficult time when we didn't have that atmosphere where they would ask me to do something early on in ministry, that they could trust me to do it. You're always second guessing, or what are they going to say? And so that was not a very good example. And watching the way people above me or leaders really treated people when they weren't in front of everyone else, when they were on the side, the way they conducted themselves, relationships, conversation, attitude, phone calls, everything. So those are bad examples. Some good examples of I've had some great people model humility, transparency, work ethic, a love for the word, a love for spouse and family, setting priorities in their life, goals, boundaries, education, all of that. I really had some good people that's gone before me that's mentored what a godly leader is, what a pastor is. And so those are some things that I've learned, but really a lot of it is scripture too, and studying, and just been doing this for so long, seeing a lot of things that work and don't work, and just growing in that, growing myself as a person.
Wonderful. And I got to tell you, Mr. Marcardini, that actually answered a couple other questions I was going to ask.
All right.
So that's perfect. I want to thank you for your time, and continue to be a good leader. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.